It's clear from various parts of the Christian scriptures that one of the main reasons people originally began to imitate Jesus' dying and rising was that it gave them a freedom they'd never before experienced. Psychologists and psychiatrists frequently remind us that on any given day we rarely do anything which is totally free. Most of our actions, even our religious actions, are simply habitual, or performed either because we're afraid of the consequences of doing the opposite, or because we want to maintain an image of ourselves that we've cultivated over the years. They're far from being free. But such freedom didn't begin with Christianity. At least 2 centuries before Jesus' birth, the author of Sirach reminded his readers that their Jewish faith revolves around making free choices. Quote, God has set before us fire and water, life and death, good and evil. Whatever we choose shall be given us. End quote. We have at least some control over our lives. It's important to remember that when Sirach originally penned these words about choice, he had no concept of an afterlife that we have today. The life he expected his readers to choose wasn't an eternal life in heaven. It was a new and improved life right here and now. Our earthly lives will become fulfilled and meaningful only when we make the choices Yahweh expects and wants us to make. Yet, as Paul reminds his Corinthian community, it isn't the easiest thing in the world to find out what God really wants us to do. Obviously, not everyone who claims to know God's mind actually knows it. According to the apostle, the rulers of this age certainly have no inkling of God's will. Unlike the risen Jesus, they're leading us away, not toward God's mysterious hidden wisdom. That's why it's essential for other Christs to have Jesus' Spirit. His Spirit alone makes our mind one with God's mind, leading us to look at everyone and everything around us from a unique perspective, God's perspective. Matthew is dealing with a community which, as Jews, believed they understood God's mind long before they came in contact with Jesus. But that encounter turned everything upside down. That seems to be behind Jesus' assurance, I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill the law and the prophets. There's nothing wrong with what they did before. Jesus is simply taking them to a new level. He's concerned not with the afterlife, but with the here and now of entering the kingdom of heaven, of experiencing God working effectively in their daily lives, their humdrum lives. To pull that off, they have to freely choose to go beyond the 613 laws of Moses. When Jesus says, "You have heard it said," he's quoting one of those covenant regulations. But in each case, he takes his followers beyond the usual interpretations of that particular regulation, giving it a new meaning, one that surpasses the righteousness of even those super Jews, the scribes and the Pharisees. His disciples, for instance, are not only to avoid physical murder, they're to renounce even the psychological murder of someone that comes from verbally abusing them. Modern moral theologians often remind us that God will eventually judge us only on the things we freely choose to do. Whatever we did out of force or fear, like going to Mass on Sunday because our parents gave no other choice, will play no role in our eternal future. The historical and risen Jesus certainly wants us to make free choices. Choices which will not only get us into heaven one day, but even now will make us able to experience the heaven that's already around us.